All right. So we might have a few more people that will stop on by and check this out. But really, I'm just kind of trying to ask the question because I keep hearing this again and again and again from people who are doing ministry. And during COVID, they went to online because they really felt like they didn't have another option. They had to do it. Now they're upset or concerned that people aren't together in person. And so they think that, or they have a perception that you can't do real ministry online. You can't have real relationships online. And so I just want to address that, look at that, and challenge some of the things out there and present a different perspective on it. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here. All right, so just taking a look here, and this isn't a whole presentation that I have. This is just part of it. So one of the things that I hear, assumptions about online church. And when people say online church, they usually simply think about an online worship service. They're not thinking about anything during the week. So I'm not trying to address the difference between those. These are just things that people say. People who attend online aren't committed. Other things that people say, people who attend online are less mature in their faith, or you can't make real relationships online. So some of it has to do with the character of the people who are preferring online versus then, well, let's just say you can't actually do an online thing and have it be meaningful. A few more. And you probably have heard more of these, so I'm not trying to be exhaustive. I'm just taking some popular ones that I've heard. If you attend online, you're not going to grow. You have to be in person in order to have growth happen. And online isn't a real gathering of the body, or online is just consuming church. So I'm going to try to, rather than just directly say, hey, here's some counters to that, I'll get into some counters to those arguments or those thoughts that people have. And some of the time, I think they have those thoughts because they just haven't investigated it further. Just on the surface, when you look at something, you say, oh, it can't be that. So if you don't know, you don't investigate, and you just say, let's go back to what we already know, what's comfortable. But here's some different responses to address that. People meet on dating sites and get married, and no one that I know of anymore says dating sites and people getting married aren't real relationships because you met online. It's pretty much established that you can meet online and have a real relationship that leads to marriage. Now, yeah, you're going to need to get together in person at some point, but the relationship is established and real prior to those things. It doesn't become real once you meet in person. People attend online, read the Bible more. I'll have a little slide on that later. This is actually true. If you're online, you're more engaged in reading the Bible. They've done some studies on that, figured that out. People who meet only in person tend not to be reading their Bible as much. Online people engage daily. They're not just coming one day a week for worship. They're engaged with other people on a daily basis. I know how hard it was. I mean, I remember growing up and it was 3 to thrive. You had Sunday morning, you had Sunday evening, and you needed Wednesday night. But there wasn't activities going on Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There wasn't a gathering together of the body on any of those other days. Just Sunday twice, Wednesday once. Online, we can do it on a daily. And the entry point for serving is very low. So think about a single mom, a single dad. They've got to get a babysitter if they're going to volunteer and leave their kids somewhere. Now, maybe they can do it on a Sunday morning, but anything else to come to is going to require that. Or you want a Bible study in the evening that you're going to gather people together for. If childcare is a necessity and getting everyone, like where I'm at right now, dressed up in the cold to go out, it's a whole adventure to do that. You have the entry point being a lot lower if I can sit at home and I can engage you in some kind of ministry while you can stay at home and everyone else who's not participating can do the same. Some other different responses. People show up because they're invested. When you're showing up online, you need to remember it's happening and you're going to be connected to it. There isn't going to be the same kind of social pressure that there was of, well, grandma's going to be sitting there, mom is going to be expecting me there, so I better show up. People that show up online are invested in what's going on because there's a lot of other options. So when they show up, they're invested in what's happening. People in person are often just consuming church. Here's the thing we often hear, well, if you're just online, you're consuming church. The reality is it doesn't matter if you're online or in person. People sometimes are just there to consume church. I often had, in many of the churches I was at, people that showed up after we did the greeting for the day so that they could slip in the back, not have to talk to anyone. And then when we were doing the final hymn, they stood up and they walked out so they didn't have to greet anyone on the way out. They came in, they did their church, and they went on the way the rest of their week. We've always had a level of people that are consuming church. So if the concern is that people who are doing digital are just consuming church, then we need to evaluate how we are presenting digital ministry to them and engage them in a relationship so that it goes beyond the content. Your content is not what people want. They can always get better content. They want a relationship. I just want to stress that because I'm on Twitch. There are 1,000 other Twitch streamers that people could go and watch. If you've got an online service, as soon as we all went, at least a lot of us in North America, all went online during COVID, now suddenly you're competing with every big, giant name brand church that's out there. Why? Why are they going to watch you? Because they have a relationship with you that goes beyond the content. And that's what you need to do when you're in the online space, is helping people be able to see that and to do that. Okay, so I told you I was going to give you some stats. So this is a graphic from the Baptist Press and weekly Bible users and online church attendance. So among those who attend primarily or equally online, so they might be online only, or they're, at least if they're in person, they're also online at least the same amount of time, 1-to-1. 74% of those people who are attending ministry online are reading their Bible weekly. Among those who only attend in person or primarily, maybe they'll go online occasionally, but in person is where they want to be, only 32% of those people read their Bible on a weekly basis. This isn't even a daily basis. This is just a weekly basis. They're picking their Bible up. They're engaged in their Bible. That's more than double. That's more than double. Why would we ignore one of the most effective things to help people in their Christian walk is to be in their Bible? And if you're doing digital things, you are more than double to be in your Bible. Okay, here's some other weekly attendance by generation. So the trend has already been going down of those who have been doing weekly attendance by generation. And then we had COVID, everything went through that. Now look at how it's coming back. The ones we would say are going to be the least likely would be the youngest. They're the ones who are coming back. Then Gen X, then boomers, the least likely to return. So if they're not returning, then maybe we should go to where they are instead of just thinking we need to convince them they need to return. Here is the comparison of in-person only to in-person and virtual. So you can see the numbers actually go up when you include in-person and virtual. It goes from 45 to 65. I mean, that's a significant jump. And you can see the trend is coming back, and some people were coming back to in-person. That's slowly there, but it's been maintaining at 75 for those that are doing both. Then just some other stats, and I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but just thinking about online is a mission field. There are 2.7 billion gamers globally. They're 26% of the world population is gamers. 1.4 billion in Asia and the Pacific region. 386 million in Europe, 377 in the Middle East, and 377 million in Africa. So if people are online and they're online gamers, you can reach them in the online space, and you can reach them in countries that are closed to the gospel by going to where they already are online. So the top global activities by generation is gaming, followed by gaming, followed by more gaming. So it is the number one activity in millennials, Gen X, Gen Alpha, and Gen Z. So, and then just doing some other thinking, reflection on, okay, how has the church historically used technology? And some of the stuff is so ingrained, we forget it was once technology. So I just got a chart here of Paul's missionary journey and what he wrote and where he wrote it to, so you can see that and then do a little reflection on that. Paul is using letters. Letter sending was only possible at a certain point in time where parchment was available. You had to have parchment invented. You had to have ink invented. We don't think of that as a technology. We do the printing press, but the technology of letters had to be created first, and he used that. He also used a scribe to be able to compose the letters. You needed someone to be able to do that, to put it together. Greek as a common universal language had to be established first. Couriers to carry the letters, to go back and forth, because Paul wasn't doing these himself. He was sending others with the letters. Roads, transportation access had to be there, or ships. You had to be able to go from point A to point B. Before all of that was established in the New Testament, all of these things were new technology. Today, we think of them as old technology. But Paul utilized every single one of those things. And I also want to point out one thing that we don't often think about. Paul wrote to the church in Rome before he ever went to Rome. He was communicating with people he did not personally have met or seen, probably. I mean, maybe there's a few that were there, but the church as a majority were not people that Paul had met, and yet he was writing to them to engage them in ministry with things that they were already doing. Wait, I already did this one previously. So that's kind of my summary of those things. Just kind of going over here are some things that people say about doing online ministry and whether or not digital can be a real relationship. And frankly, I really think it can be. I've got relationships with several of the people here on TCD that are ongoing, and we're doing ministry together. I've got pastor groups that I do online with. We've shared our life stories, our life journey. We pray with one another. We're doing things together. And when we meet in person, it's just an enhancement of what we're already doing. So can real life ministry happen? Can real life relationship happen when you never meet in person? Well, Paul was able to do it with Rome and establish those before he ever went there. Pen pals were able to establish real relationships before people ever met, and some never met each other. And people meet online and they date and they get married because of real life relationships that start online. So I think it can happen. I think it's a wonderful thing for the kingdom. I think the digital space is a great, wide open mission field.